Welcome, everyone, to this day 5 of the August 2025 Future Forward event. I'm Bill Murphy. Almost everyone knows me as Murph, and I'll be your host and presenter for this hour-long webinar about preparing yourselves for the 2026 Top Advisor Awards. But before we get started on today's topic, I've got a few housekeeping things and a couple of polls to take care of. So, if you're not already a member of Insightful Accountants' premium offering called Be Insightful, you should be. We offer 9 training tracks, and they include things like tech stack, app comparisons, migrations, human relations, marketing, business development, and more. The training is led by some of the top trainers in our profession. Members have access to more than 30 CPA credit hours per year, including workshops and a variety of year-round content. And in fact, I just added a white paper last month on how to migrate from QuickBooks Desktop to Sage 50, step by step. Now, I'm excited most about the fact that Be Insightful is going to host a Caribbean cruise next July. 7 days at sea with stops in St. Kitts, Puerto Plata, and Tortola. This isn't any cruise. No, this is Sea Day Symposium in which you can work on your business and sessions curated and led in such a way that when you return home, you'll have a strategy and execution plan to grow your business. But you'll also be sufficiently relaxed from all that R&R to give you the energy to do that. So if you want more information about the cruise or membership in Be Insightful, just answer yes to the poll that we've had open. And let's go ahead and close that poll now. And we don't need to show it. All right. Today is a CPE eligible webinar. You have to be here for 50 minutes. You must answer at least 3 of the polling questions for CPE. If you meet this criteria, we'll send you a certificate within 24 hours, and you'll receive an email following the event with links to the archive, which will be posted to our YouTube channel. And we'll also drop the link into the chat and also give you the ability to download the slide deck PDF. If you have questions, though, we want you to post those during the webinar into the Q&A. I may stop and actually take some questions during the presentation. Others I'll try to get to at the end. And if there's questions I can't get to, then I'll respond to those via email. Lastly, we want to know if you plan on attending Intuit Connect in Las Vegas at the end of October. Matt's going to open a poll here to ask you if you're going to attend. The reason is we're planning a ProAdvisor event at this year's conference if sufficient attendance from our listeners are present. And this is one of those things, the more the merrier. It's not restricted to anybody except people attending, of course, Intuit Connect. And so if you'll go ahead and answer whether you're attending or not on that poll, that'll be most helpful. And let's go ahead and close that poll and let's look at the results if we can. So 60% of you are not planning on attending, 30% of you are still thinking about it, and 12% say you definitely are. So hopefully the 41% that make up the yes and I'm thinking about it will be there so you can attend our event. Okay. Let's get to the meat of the matter. First of all, I think everybody knows that who I am and how long I've been around. I've been here longer than dirt was made, and I just about do everything. I always call myself the junior executive research consultant at Insightful Accountant. That's JERK for short. Uh, and as you know, I also administer the awards program. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm not going to take the time to go through this agenda. We're going to go through it step by step. So why read over it? And I'm not going to spend time covering the learning objectives because you're going to get asked polling questions about every one of these five learning objectives. And as I said, you have to answer at least three of the five. So let's talk about the timeline. Now, the awards process is going to open about mid August. I can tell you that in my calendar is between the 10th and the 20th. And so you can figure that out in there. We're already at the 8th. Uh, Third party nominations will end, and we'll talk about third party nominations, but they will end in mid December. Then the application deadline is going to be in early March of 2026. Voting will begin by the middle of March, and voting will end by the middle of April. Now, the top tax advisors and the top international groups will be announced in early May, and then the top 100 U.S. pro advisors and top 25 up and coming pro advisors will be announced before the middle of May. Presentation of the major awards is still scheduled for June 2026 at Scaling New Heights. For 10 years, we had a single group we called the Top 100 Pro Advisors. And we had hundreds of people who applied or were nominated every year. And we quickly learned that a lot of people stuck on the list because they ranked so high. And we tried to find ways to deal with that. We had a growing number of internationals participating. And so in 2023, we added the top 50 internationals and the top 25 up and comers. And I'll visit with you just a little about how we define an up and comer in a bit. But for 2026, we're adding a new group, top 25 tax advisors that recognizes an increased number of pro advisors who are incorporating tax into their practice. When we started, less than 20% of our pro advisors did tax. Now, more than 40% of our pro advisors do tax. And this also allows individuals who get certified in tax using the Intuit Academy. That's not the QuickBooks Pro Advisor Academy, but a separate academy. And we can recognize those people even if they're not certified as QuickBooks Pro Advisors. That's one reason this year when you see us refer to the awards collectively, we no longer use the term Pro Advisor because we now are potentially recognizing individuals who are not pro advisors under the top 25 tax advisors. So, Matt's going to open our first CPE polling question. And we want you to select exactly four of those listed that represent the four award groups I just talked about. Top 100 U.S. Pro Advisors, top 25 tax advisors, top 50 international advisors, top 50 tax advisors, top 25 up and coming pro advisors, top 25 international advisors. Select exactly four. Okay, I think you've got time for that. So, Matt, let's look at that. And what you should have answered this as is uh, the first one is correct, the second one is correct, the third one is correct. Then it is the fifth one, top 25 up and coming pro advisors, is correct. And the top 50 tax advisors and top 25 international advisors, those are incorrect. Okay. Uh, so that's the one we just did. Yeah. All right. Now let's talk about the award categories. We talked about the four award groups. These are the award categories that make up the top 100. Now, a lot of people think that the top 100 is the people who score the 100 people who score the highest number of points on the application. That absolutely is not correct. We take and rank all of the individual pro advisors who participate in the categories that they either qualify for or that they tell us that they believe they most closely are aligned with. And that ranking, we have a select number from each of those categories that then is selected to make up the top 100. So, here for the first time ever seen for 2026 are those ranking values. We will select the 35 highest ranked positions from QuickBooks Online Pro Advisors, the 10 highest ranked positions from the mid-market group, and I'll talk about that in a moment because we actually expanded that to now include Intuit Enterprise Suite, and then 5 from Appology, that's the app specialization. 25 from desktop, all versions, because we recombined Enterprise with Pro and Premier since Pro and Premier is dwindling away. And so we're taking 25 there. Desktop integrations is 5. Educators is 5. Social media pro advisors is 5. Client CAS, Client Accounting Services BPO Pro Advisors is 5, and QuickBooks Niche Pro Advisors is 5. If you add those all up, that's 100 positions. And then let's talk about the major awards. Well, the highest single ranked individual in each of the categories becomes the categorical award recipient. I'll say that again. The highest ranked participant in each of the categories becomes the categorical award recipient. Then, of all of the categorical award recipients, the highest overall scoring pro advisor becomes the pro advisor of the year. Uh, Now, when it comes to the international, then it's exclusively the highest ranked number or the highest ranked individual within the total number of pro advisors we're recognizing. All right. The premise is also the same for the up-and-comer group. The 25 are ranked, and the highest ranking of the up-and-comer group is the up-and-comer of the year. So we want you now to identify what you think is your primary award category alignment. Do you primarily focus on QBO? Do you focus on the mid-market as defined by QBO Advanced or Intuit Enterprise Service, Intuit Enterprise Suite? Do you primarily focus on Apology? Do you primarily focus on desktop? How about desktop third-party integrations? Are you primarily an educator? Do you focus on social media? Are you a social media mogul for QuickBooks? Is your practice client accounting services, providing business process outsourcing? Or do you have a niche practice? Maybe you specialize in construction, or maybe you specialize in nonprofit, or maybe you specialize in uh, hospitality, restaurants, hotels, etc. So we want you to select only one of these, and you should have had plenty of opportunity to do that. Okay? So let's look at the results, Matt. About 41% say that you are QBO. About 23% say you are desktop. And let's see, 27% say you're CAS. 9% are niche practice. Okay? Great. Now, the good news is you don't only get scored and ranked in one category, you actually get scored and ranked in every one of these categories. So if we have 3,000 pro advisors participating, all 3,000 get ranked in each of these categories based on how they respond and answer to the questions in the application. They get to choose whether they want to fill out an application. For example, somebody might say, I don't provide education, so I don't want to fill that out. So they don't have to fill that out. Same might be true as I could care less about social media, so I don't deal with that. Obviously, then that reduces your score because you're not having those category specific factors included. But you get ranked in all of these, and that's why potentially, if we have 3,000 people who are all using QBO, it'd be pretty difficult to just say, well, you're not doing anything else. But in reality, most people provide some degree of service relative to this. For example, we require you to provide us information about the apps you use. You don't have to provide everyone, and I'll talk about that difference this year. But we measure you in that, and that also includes desktop products. So you get measured in effect in desktop integrations as well. But obviously, if you don't do desktop, the extent to which desktop integrations are measured is going to be fairly minimal. So, sure having a problem with. Okay, I want to talk about the application forms and the nomination forms because people get confused about that. And hopefully by this year, you will have learned that If you are a ProAdvisor, you do not have to complete the nomination form. The nomination form has one purpose: for an individual to actually nominate someone else. And we don't care who that individual is. Uh, Generally, it is another ProAdvisor, and we ask a lot of questions about if they have a practice, et cetera, to try to define it. But as long as they provide their key information so that we can advise the individual who is nominated who nominated them, um, it is anybody can nominate a ProAdvisor. And they can nominate either a ProAdvisor in the US or they can nominate a ProAdvisor outside of the United States. However, if you are a ProAdvisor within the United States, you do not have to go through the nomination form. You can go straight to the US application. And that's what we prefer. It makes a lot of extra work when you go through the nomination form. But we still have about 15% of all the applicants who participate actually use the nomination form to get to the application form. Now, the application form we call the US, or sometimes I refer to it as the domestic form. It is for only advisors residing within the United States or a U.S. territory who are applying for the top 100, the top 25, and the top 25 up and comers, and the top 25 tax awards this year. The form directs the applicant into the correct groupings of questions based on the information they provide. And it is extremely important that when a survey asks you about allowing geolocation, that you agree to do that, because this is our actual way of verifying your domestic status. You know, somebody can put in US and actually be off in, well, across the ocean somewhere, any and everywhere. The same is true for international applicants. Anyone residing outside the United States or U.S. territories, regardless of the country or countries in which they perform work, is an international advisor as far as we're concerned. And it's extremely important that they provide their geolocation, agree to that when the survey asks them to do so, because that's how we verify international status. So, I want to begin talking about streamlining. And we did this last year. Not a lot of people noticed it, but we did it last year in the 25 awards. And this year we're asking you, did you apply in 25 or did you apply in 24? Or have you participated before 24? Or have you, uh, is this your first time? And the reason this is important is if you have applied in 25 or 24, we can actually pull key information out of that. You don't see it populated, but the questions you don't answer, if you choose not to answer them, get populated with that data. I'll say that again. The data from your 25 or your 24 will populate the answer to questions you choose not to populate in your 26 application. It is all behind the scenes because you don't even, if you choose not to participate in a question, you don't even see that question. but it's still populated with your data. And folks, let me just point out, uh, I hope within another year or so that we're able to do that for almost 100% of the questions in the application form. That we can pull data from the prior form if you tell us it hasn't changed. And even if it has changed, if it is what we call assumptive data, then there's no reason for you to answer it. If you told us last year that you'd been a ProAdvisor for 9 years, I know that this year you've been a ProAdvisor for 10 years. So why should you have to tell me that? And so you get to pick your content update option. You say, I wish to only update certain information. Now, there's other information that you must also update, but this streamlines a great many questions. And so, for example, we ask you, has your higher education changed? In other words, you no longer have that long question of, I have to go through and pick what my highest level of education is, put in the year that I graduated, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if it changed, then we're going to ask you how it changed. Same with professional credentials and organizational memberships. Most people never change organizational memberships over the course of 10 years. We see very little. I mean, oh, okay, you went from Nan to Woodard. But ever since then, you've been in Woodard, in the Woodard uh, membership, you know, but you had to go through a long list and find Woodard and check it. Well, you know, if you haven't changed, you don't need to go through that long question. Have you changed, added, removed your profile on the Find a ProAdvisor? Removed or added, I should say, not changed it. Uh, did you begin or expand your QuickBooks desktop practice? You completed QuickBooks Enterprise certification. You added support for either QBO Advanced or Intuit Enterprise Suite. You developed or expanded your niche. You focused or expanded your focus on tax practice. What do you think that's going to do? It's going to open up the tax practice questions. You expanded into or substantially grew your client accounting advisory services. Again, it's going to open up that set of questions. Or you began or expanded your role as an educator. And this may not be all of it. These were all taken at a time in the past, and there may be a few others. All right. And then we're going to ask you, okay, what do you think? Used to, I ask, what do you think was your primary? What was your secondary? What do you think your third category was? And we use that to help us actually consolidate your scoring. We don't necessarily need that, but we like to know what you think, just as I asked you a moment ago, your primary focus is as a ProAdvisor. It tells us where you think you should be, not necessarily where you will be. And I'll give an example of that. Now, training has changed drastically to simplify it. I'll just say that again. Training has changed drastically to simplify it. No longer do you have to go through a long list of 150 training things and pick which ones you did. Now you simply tell us the training you took. That's the way we did it long ago. Then we said well, the issue was that uh, we could hardly read most people's put one thing in. For example, they'd say scaling heights or scaling new heights or QB webinar or, well, guess what? We don't really care what it is. What we want to know and what you get scored on is completion date and the type of training and the number of hours or credits. That's what's key. Um, sorry. That's what's key. There's one other factor, and you can't see it in this slide, but I've written about it and posted it in my 2026 series. Um, and that is the right-hand column now has a toggle of if you taught it, if you instructed this class. You get credit for attending it, you get credit for instructing it. The hours go to two different places. One, the hours for attending it as the instructor get counted towards your training hours. The hours, same hours, get applied and multiplicated as an instructor. Used to, we'd ask you, what have you taken? What have you taught? Two different sets took twice as long to do it. Now it's all in one. And this is something different. You no longer have to list everything individually. You can consolidate. So, for example, if you attend all 10, I think last year there were 10. I'm not sure exactly how many there will be this year, but in 2024, there were 10 uh, in the know webinars. All right. You can consolidate those by putting in the know, sponsor's name into it, putting the completion date of the last one you actually attended. Maybe you didn't attend all 10, maybe you only attended 8 of them. Okay. You put the completion date of that. You tell us, okay, I got 8 CPE credits. This was live virtual. And that's what generates your score. Don't take time to list everyone when you have repeat events like what used to be Michelle's webinar that Dan does now. When you do QB Talks, for example, Future Forward, you can put Future Forward August, and there was, up to 8 hours. No, actually 5 hours, I think, for Future Forward August, etc. So please consolidate. don't spend don't spend an hour writing because there's 12 of these listed, and at the bottom of these 12 is a question that goes, do you need more than 12? And if you check yes, then it opens another 12. And if you check yes, it opens another 12. And if you check yes, it opens another 12. And guess what? 48's the limit, and we actually have a training hour limit. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but we have an overall training hour limit, just as we have an overall instructional hour limit. But it's in the multiple hundreds, I can tell you that. All right. And now I'm going to talk about our simplification of app information. We've done it exactly the same way. We want to know your preferred 2 apps for a whole group of categories. Last year, we had more than 400 apps listed that people had to go through and tell us, did you use it? Did you not use it or not use it or not use it? Now you just select whatever you use. You're not even required to enter data about every one of these categories. Uh, you I think there's a one category requirement, but you do have to enter information about each of the various columns. Things like I use it or my entire firm uses it, I referred it or I resold it, I was certified before last year, I was certified this year, I was recertified this year. That's one column. The last column is implementations. I didn't implement any this year. I implemented fewer than 20. I implemented more than 20. I implemented more than 100. And so it should be real simple. Just write them in. That says it's impossible for us to remember. Well, you should have all your certificates. Um, you need to start your own list. It's too difficult for me to compile all of those lists. I would do nothing but that. Identify two significant differences. So in this poll, we want you to pick out two things that I've talked about that are significantly different. Streamlining permits a reduced number of questions that applicants must answer. Come and go option permits users to close and reopen. That's actually something we did last year. Simplifying means applicants can answer questions applicable to them and ignore questions that have nothing in common with their practice. Nominated individuals will receive an email. U.S. applicants must use the international application if they're providing service anywhere outside the United States. So pick two of these five. And that should be sufficient time, I think, Matt. So let's go ahead and close that poll. Streamlining permits a reduced number of questions. That's true. Come and go was last year. Simplifying meaning applicants can answer questions applicable to them and ignore questions that have nothing in common. That's true. The other two, nominated individuals receive an email. Well, they've been doing that at least the last 2 years. And U.S. applicants must use the international app if providing service. That's totally incorrect. It doesn't matter where you provide service. It only matters where you are resident. Now, let me give you, I talked a minute ago about using geolocation. And perhaps you don't want to use your app. I'm sorry. Perhaps you don't want to fill out your application while you're on vacation in Belize or Mexico, or you're on vacation in France, or you're on vacation in Switzerland, because geolocation is going to tell us this person's in Switzerland and they're trying to apply for the U.S. ProAdvisor Top 100. Um, in those cases, uh, don't accept the geolocation. but we would greatly prefer that you just complete your application while you're in the United States or in your country of origin if you're an international applicant. All right. And so now I'm going to talk about knowing your numbers. You would be surprised how many people, uh, I believe, go into this application without knowing their numbers. And when I say their numbers, you need to know the number of clients you have for the products you use. You have to know the number of clients you have. Now, all of this is approximate. That's why these are groups. But the number by category of businesses, especially if you're a niche, percentage of your business that is applicable to products, percentage of your business that's applicable to certain functions of a pro advisor, functions, accounting functions and features, especially if you are in client accounting services. Uh, you just need to have all that information. And if you're guessing at this, chances are you're under guessing yourself because most people say, well, I certainly don't want to overrepresent myself, so I'm not going to pick 101 to 150 when I think I've probably got about 90, so I'll select 61 to 100. And then later they find out, oh my goodness, I have 125 clients that are using uh, QuickBooks Online Plus. I had no idea that I had that many. I thought more of them were using essentials or etc. Uh, and it's the same with all of this. So know your numbers, folks. Again, you want to put your best foot forward, and that means maximize your actual practice, your your own ProAdvisor practice. Now, again, I will also say these awards are based on individuals. They are not firm based awards. So we're not asking you to tell us how many, oh, I've got 3,000 people using Online Plus. Well, no, that's for your entire firm. How many of those 3,000 do you actually work with? Uh, and if you are stressing out over, well, I use that mid market thing, QBO Advanced, uh, and one of the questions we want to know is, well, of those features that Intuit says are unique to QBO Advanced, how does that fit into your role? How does that fit into your client base? That's what differentiates the fact that you say, I just support QBO Advanced doesn't really differentiate you from somebody doing QBO plus unless you can identify those unique things that are specific to QBO Advanced and how that fits into your practice in terms of how many of your clients are using that. As I said, you also need to know your percentages, things like the percentage of the type of work you do. Well, almost all of my work with desktop is in technical support, just trying to make it work or troubleshooting problems and issues, maybe doing data issues. I never let any of my clients run the rebuild. I always do that for my clients, etc. Uh, or supporting third party apps. Um, we ask these same kind of questions regardless of the overall platform. For example, related to IES, well, things change because IES is supported by Intuit directly, but there are things that pro advisors can do in working with their clients who are using IES because you can still work with those clients through QBO accountant. And so you need to be able to tell us what percentage related to IES you're doing for these clients that you support. I'm sorry. I keep trying to make that work and it just wants to jump. All right. Now, if you are a pro advisor who has a tax practice and you answered that question about tax practice, and if you are a tax practitioner who is not a pro advisor, but who is certified in tax through the Intuit Academy, then you will have a separate training location to tell us about your tax training. We don't want tax training put in over under the pro advisor. And it specifically says do not enter tax classes. And we recognize different sponsoring agencies. We want to know what it is. We want to know whether it's about federal tax or state tax. We want to know when it started. We want to know when it ended. Again, some of these events can be multi-day, depending on who delivers them, the total number of hours you earned or got CPEs for, etc. If you have a niche, we want to know what percentage of your practice is actually devoted to the niche. Now, a lot of people say, I specialize in nonprofit, but then we find out, well, actually, they say only 20 to 40% of their business is nonprofit. The rest is divided into other general businesses or maybe even another specialty. So we want to know that. Uh, we want to know if you are a payroll specialist, what you do, what your primary tasks are. I mean, some people will only set up people in payroll. Other people only do the tax in payroll. Other people do or supervise the time and time entries in payroll, etc. Some people do all of these, but you ought to be able to rank them if you do them all. All right, educators. This year's form allows you to report hours that you provided as an instructor under that training section. Remember, I said the right hand column of the training is toggle for instructed or taught. You no longer have to list those separately. You all stick it all over there. But then if you have unreported hours you need to report, uh, you can do that. And if you have unreported hours teaching clients, all right, which almost everybody does that, you train your clients, that's where it goes, how many hours you spent training. If you tell us over there what you do with your QBO clients, about 50% of it's teaching them, training them, well, you should be reporting it over here under educator. I have unreported hours to report for instructing, training clients, QuickBooks users. You don't have to tell us what you train them in. You just have to tell us how many hours you spent doing it. And then we have a lot of people who publicly speak to professionals. Uh, it's not what you would call formal training, it's public speaking. And that counts towards being an educator because you're educating those professionals. And one person who did about 600 hours of that last year, who in the previous year had done just as many, but didn't ever even see that option. And it's always been there other hours uh, of instruction, teaching, public speaking to report. And when she finally figured that out, it drastically changed her score. Um, and then those educators who write, we want to know how many pages you wrote. Content for pro advisors and QuickBooks users, other content for accounting, bookkeeping, or consulting. So if you wrote a 300-page book, we want to know about a 300-page book. If if you wrote articles for Insightful Accountant or Joe Woodard or whoever, we want to know how many pages it was. And we define a page as 333 words. All right. And up and comers. You have to be able to tell us about your practice, tell us how it's grown in terms of number of clients over 5 years. Tell us how your firm has grown over 5 years. Be prepared to document your social media in hours per week. Be prepared to rank professional traits you exemplify, and be prepared to enumerate personal objectives for the upcoming year. And so I told you that I would tell you about how we define a true up and comer. It's a very complex formula in that we calculate two statistics from our application data. The first statistic is how many years have you been a pro advisor? The next is how many years have you been in the profession? And then we take the 15th percentile of each of those, blend them together, and that determines the difference between someone in the group overall and someone we define as an up and comer. And then they are ranked accordingly. Now, this particular area is a group of questions that you may or may not have access to, depending on how those numbers blend out. But that's what really defines an up and comer. That's why one year you might see people who have only 3 or 4 years in up and comer. Other years you might see people who have 5 or 6 years in upper, as many as 5 or 6 years in, and be in the up and comers. All right, polling question number 5. Identify 3 ways to put your best foot forward when completing your application. Select only 3 of the above. All right. Matt, let's see the results. Know your numbers. Okay. Report every training hour. Know your numbers. Educators. Yeah. And up and comers. All right. So guess what, folks? All 6 of these are correct. What we're trying to do here is see if you're still really listening, not just answering questions. But all 6 of these are correct. And so we just wanted to see if you recognized at least 3 of them. And everybody pretty well did. Okay, let's continue on. At the bottom of the first page of the application, whether it's the U.S. application or the international application, it says, if you have problems, reach out to me at my email address. Send me an email and let me know if you're having a problem with the form. We do occasionally have problems with the form, and we try to ensure that all the logic is working the way it's supposed to be, that takes you to the right set of questions, that maybe skips a page because you don't need that page, or skips a page because you're not eligible for that category, et cetera, et cetera. And so, if you have problems, if you think something's wrong, if you lose your email that tells you, okay, you've successfully saved and closed. To return to it, use this link. I can find it, but we believe that you really need to put one of those little red exclamation marks on that email and keep it, because it is the only way to get back to your actual application. And when you start submitting multiple applications, that creates problems, especially if you submit more than two. So please keep a hold of your, this is how you get back to your application form. Give me a give me a shout via email. Now don't expect me to answer it in 5 minutes, but I want to say thanks to all of our sponsors this year: Avalara, Indeed, Ignition, Kajabra, Zoho, ADP, Paytrace, Galen Heights, and of course QuickBooks and the QuickBooks ProAdvisor program, as well as our own Be Insightful program. And I want to mention that on the 20th of this month, Avalara will be with me for QB Talks, and they're going to talk about the top 5 reasons Avalara belongs in your tech stack beyond sales tax. And somebody said, I just missed pressing the button. Well, remember, we've had 5 polls. If you answered at least 3 of those, then you qualify for CPE if you've been here for the entire 50 minutes. And I just kind of want to look here for a minute and say hi to a few people that I see, like Dominique and Emily and Kathy and Lauren, and let's see here. Well, to all of you, I appreciate you being here today on a Friday at noon, which may very well be the last day you have before kids have to go back to school. I know school starts here in Moore, the tornado capital of the world, uh, early next week. And so, to give up a Friday just before, um, I really appreciate you being here. Hopefully, we answered your questions. Hopefully, we gave you some tips, not tricks, tips about how to score the highest you possibly can score. Just remember, keep all those hours, know all those courses you took, uh, know all your numbers about your practice, and hopefully we will see you in one of the lists this year. Remember, you don't win these awards. You're awarded these awards based on merit. This is exclusively merit, with the exception of the tiny bit of the total score that comes from the vote. I always compare it to the dog show, saying, at the dog show, the judge is scoring every dog based on a standard for that breed. He has, at Best in Show, he has to know the standards for every possible breed. And he's always comparing the dog to the standard, not to the other dogs. But what impacts him psychologically is when he hears that audience clapping for one given dog, and there's so many more people clapping about that one particular dog. Well, that's kind of the way the vote is. it has a impact, but it certainly doesn't drive the final point system. It, I don't know that it's ever made a single difference in rankings that wound up being the individual who earned ProAdvisor of the Year. So, again, thanks you for being here, and best of luck to you in participating in this year's awards program. Matt, with that, I'll say goodbye and we'll close this out.